There's Riverside.
Yeah, I like Riverside too, but I've had a few errors with it, so I'm sticking with Zoom. So anyhow, let's do
Yeah,
this. Welcome to the
this
Brand
works. Let's go.
Laboratory. And so welcome to the Brand Laboratory, where we're going to uncover the humanity behind the brand. So who you are is how you lead, and how you lead is how you grow. And I firmly believe that. And we're going to explore stories, we're going to explore philosophies and superpowers that define who these extraordinary leaders are that I'm inviting onto this podcast and the brands that they have built. And so I'm excited to explore that today. Today's guest is someone who has spent a few decades helping businesses overcome challenges that a lot of leaders don't even realize that are holding them back and sabotaging them in a lot of way. His name is Mike Straza. He's a fractional COO and CFO, and he's the founder of Consulting. And he's got over 25 years of experience across, he's industry agnostic. He's worked in tech, he's worked in healthcare, he's worked in real estate, and he's built a reputation for solving complex problems and delivering results that align their teams with the goals. And it's not just on an individual basis, it's this collective of the company, whether you're a small business or a large business. He focuses in on the alignment of that space. And so in our conversation with Mike today, I really want to explore what makes Mike tick. I want to hear about his journey, his approach, how he handles leadership and his view of that, and the lessons he's learned from guiding companies to clarity and growth, and some lessons he's learned as an individual himself. And hopefully, by the end of this show, we'll be able to have a conversation to uncover what truly sets Mike apart as a leader, as a coach, as a consultant. And I'm really excited to get to know this gentleman. So settle in. This is not just about your business. It's about discovering what's possible when you align strategy with vision and unlock your full human potential. So, Mike, welcome to the show, brother.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me on. I'm excited to have a conversation and see where it goes.
All right, then. So are you ready to get real with me, though? I told you in the beginning of the conversation, we have real conversations. I don't want
Yeah,
any sales pitches. I just want to know who you are as a human here.
I am. I get pretty real when people say that, and I agree with it, and then they're like, "Oh, I didn't know we're going real."
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about you first, just your
Yeah,
origin story, the humanity behind the brand. Is there any
yeah.
particular stories from your life that you think could best explain who you are today, that might encapsulate who you are and what you embody?
Yeah, a lot of just in a business sense, why I do what I do. For the first part of it would be I grew up in the world of family being entrepreneurs, business owners, advisors, from having a restaurant to doing people's taxes. My grandmother did taxes till she was 80 some years old. I had family that were in the aeronautical business, creating parts and stuff for the space shuttle, for airplanes, things like that. There was a wide range. And then I had my stepfather who was in medical, so he was a physician and he did stuff. So I've always grown up and been involved in hearing about business, about people. And that's where I just was drawn to, is like I'm watching people help others solve problems or make things better. So that's where I went from this, where it's just been something exciting for me to do. And I just carried that on 25 plus years.
It's amazing to me in my 20 some years, and by the way, congratulations on your 25-year career. It's amazing to me in my 20 some years in this entrepreneurial space, how many times people forget to focus on the problem that they actually solve in their
Mhm.
business or their operation or whatever their service or their invention that they have, and really only look at it from their perspective, like this is what it's done for me, instead of looking at it from the customer's perspective. How
Mhm.
can I benefit by solving someone else's problem? So I love that you said that, this whole problem solving idea in terms of your career itself. So you're an entrepreneur, you have an agency, a consultancy, you're a coach.
Mhm.
Were you doing something else prior to this? What's your experience like? We work in the corporate world. I heard you've talked about a variety of
Yeah.
different things, but corporate experience first or straight up into entrepreneurialism?
Yeah, my first experience was after college. I ran competitively in Division One school, so that was a competition, that working with a team and doing that type of thing. After I left there, I went to a small firm to do research and development
Mm.
for currency. So back then it was foreign currency, so we're trading currencies worldwide, and I was learning that world and trying to understand what that was about. So then I did that for a short time, but then I went to a marketing company and worked with the Fortune 100 companies on their marketing, Dell, Caterpillar, things like that. And that's where I really learned a lot about negotiations, about how things are done. And ultimately, what it came down to is like, how do I help organizations? And that's where a lot of it came to, is like, learning that what are people needing? What are the things that make a company be successful, or what does it make to make a person successful? And that was something that was always very interesting to me.
I'm always fascinated by business coaches and consultants who work with large organizations or just multi-person individuals or organizations in the first place, because going from company to company, there's always a unique set of problems that you're solving because every company has their own unique contextual problems, right? So as a business coach and a consultant, being able to put on all these different hats and be this sort of Swiss Army knife, if you will, and going into these spaces, it's got to be one of the bigger challenges, I would imagine, because I work on an individual level with clients, but everyone's so different and everybody has their own unique sort of personality and their quirks and all the different things. And it's, you literally have to be a chameleon in some capacity to be able to interact and engage and find people and meet them where they are and that sort of stuff. How do you find the question is, how have you found the ability to understand those subtleties and nuances and meet people where they are in your capacity? And before you answer that question, dude, just because it's going to be easier for us to edit, can I get a little bit more of your face in the camera? And then we'll pull. Yeah, let me see that beautiful mug. There we are.
It's
All
like,
right.
thought it was a little high.
Yeah. I don't want you to look like a Muppet when we're editing you. So, yeah. All right. So back to the question. How do you as a coach step into these environments that have all these different nuances and different personalities and leadership and all these different things and be able to sort of understand that intuitively and meet people where they are? What's your secret sauce around that?
A lot of it is growing up, I was always an observer. So I always watch people. I'd always enjoy, you're walking down the street, you're in a mall, you're in some location around with family, not with family, businesses. And I'm always observing, watching how people interact with each other and how they react. And what really is that, instead of just looking at that, this is what they're saying and saying, why are they saying it? How is their expression? What's their body? How are they standing, sitting, looking? What are they doing? What are they telling you? Seeing the things that you can tell from what people are saying just through their body language. And over time, like you said, anywhere you go, if you're working with an individual, an organization, there's personalities, there's people that you're dealing with that are all coming from different backgrounds. And that's just something I always looked at as, okay, we all came from different areas of life. We've all had experiences, good and bad, and trying to understand where they're at this time, because you can always work with somebody. It's just you got to understand who they are a little bit more and understand maybe what they've been through or where they're going or what they want to do, and trying to understand that instead of being about me focused, being them focused, and then saying, okay, how do I take what I see and what they're telling me, and how do I make that organization or something move in a better way to improve it?
My grandfather always used to joke with me. He'd grab my ear and he's like, God gave you two ears and one mouth for a reason, Debbie. You need to use them. He's always, listen, just watch. There's so much you can learn before you even engage by just listening. In terms of, are you a family man?
Family man, I have a wife and no kids.
If your wife was in a private conversation with me, what would she say about you? How would she describe who you are in one word?
I think she would say just a good listener. Yeah, I guess that would be it, or just never quit.
What would your friends say about you?
Loyal. Yeah, I think loyal, willing to do whatever it takes to help somebody.
Mm. And what about your clients, the people that you've worked with that have really had the opportunity to sit with you and learn from you and engage with you and collaborate with you? What would they say about you? And I'm not talking about the testimonies on Google. If someone was having a real conversation, like what would someone say about you that you've helped?
I think a lot of it, even with my most recent ones, they when we first start and I tell them who I am, and then when they see it actually working in person, then they understand more about how I collaborate and how I work with people and have an understanding about what they're doing and who they're, even in their employees. I think that was one of the things. As we talk today, my superpower, as you said earlier, is more discernment. And that's an interesting word for a lot of people. And it's more of, I can see things, understand things, or come up with evaluate something pretty quickly and not necessarily say it. So you, like you said, your grandfather or someone said, listen first before speaking. And that's the thing, is listening and collecting and understanding, not because it's going to be used in a bad way. It's more of understanding and hearing more than sometimes what they're saying. And that's where that discernment comes in, and saying, okay, I see where this is going. I don't know the whole story. I have part of the story. And as we will work together, that story will develop. And that's when I'm talking to whoever I am at my client level, at different levels of the organization is I explain some things ahead of time, say, this is what I see, but I want to verify before this is something that is where we're going to move on. And they're always excited. Wow, you read the room and you've only been here for a very short time. And then from there is how do we execute? How do we change, if that's a change that we need to make, or how do we improve on something that they've been working on for a very long time, but having an outside source that can help them, guide them.
It's always helpful to be able to have a set of eyes outside your own jar. I heard that metaphor a few years ago from a friend of mine named Gary, and he was talking about why he got into coaching in the first place. And it centered around, he noticed that he had a lot of blind spots in his own life, and he wasn't able to see those because he was stuck inside of his own jar. And then it wasn't until he hired someone, a coach or a strategist or a consultant, that could be candid and honest with him and read his label and share that with him. It's a phenomenal paradigm shift that you have to make consciously to understand that you might not have all the answers, or that somebody else might have a completely different perspective. I always tell people, I do this workshop on perception is reality, and how no matter what you think about your situation, somebody else thinks it a little bit differently. And so it's our job to understand what's your perception, and whether it's about me or just in the situation itself. I went to this workshop. Sorry, I'm going somewhere with this question. I went to this workshop because this really pertains to you and your industry. But it was centered around conversation and listening and what body language and all these different things these tics that people have and these things that you were just talking about. But one of the biggest takeaways I had from that workshop was that in conversation, we're always not listening, we're actually crafting our response. Yeah. And a lot of times our response has nothing to do with what the person just said to me. Yeah. And I see this all the time. I show up as guests on podcasts, and people be asking me questions, and I'll give some thoughtful response, which I think is pretty good response. And they just move into something else. I was like, wait, let's break that down a bit. So here's your question. Sorry, I had to get that out. When you're working with all these different types of leaders, because you're working with CEOs, and you're working with people who are used to being in charge, the alpha, whatever, the decision maker, the leader. So it's your job to really pick up on these tics, these nuances in this conversation. How have you developed that skill? Because I find it to be a very difficult skill to develop in a lot of people I meet.
A lot of it is, going back to what you said a second ago, is you hear a question, or you hear someone leading you to a place, and you start rehearsing in your head, what should I say? Oh, I got this thing, I got this anecdote, or I have this interesting thing to say. And then you're like, the other person's talking. Oh, were they still talking about that? Or am I still in my own story? And I think that's where sometimes I can catch myself of saying, where did I go? Was I still in the conversation, or did I just leave the conversation because I was rehearsing or thinking about something else that triggered another word association, thing like that? So a lot of it is trying to stay in the now and be right in that moment and listening to what that person is saying, because there is value in everything people say, but it's just sometimes we get distracted so easily. And that's where I have to always, when I'm talking to somebody, a CEO, or no matter what level, C-level, or somebody that's a director, or whatever level they're at, making sure I'm with them and connecting with them, because they're going to over time notice, they're like, that person is glazed over, and where did they go? And it's like trying to make sure you're staying on topic, or trying to provide, because you're always thinking in your head, am I providing something because they're asking me a question, and now am I providing something that's interesting, or is it something that they like, oh yeah, I agree, yeah, let's talk about that, or that's a good idea.
How would you handle that if you're in a conversation with somebody and they're glazing over and you're obviously aware of it? Do you call them out on that, or you just let them run with it?
I let them run with it. Always look at it as you can tell, or something that's like that, and it's just in my head. I have to play back. The thing is, okay, was it me? Did I just talk too much? Did I need to slow down and listen more? That type of thing, because you always pick up weird things. So you have to then you have to get rid of that mind trash in your head of, is it me? Is it them? Am I boring? Am I not? Am I not connecting? And sometimes you have to get through that. And I still have it. You go through all the talk. You have people coach you yourself. I have coaches at times that help me. You just have to pull all that away, just knowing, oh, this is people. you have to figure out, okay, how do I deal with people no matter if they're checked in or not?
I've never been accused of being terribly diplomatic, but I do not. I'll use a self-deprecating on my own person. I'm like, dude, am I that really that boring? Are you falling asleep on me? So I'll just call that, like, all right, how can I change this conversation up? So I'll make it because I want to make sure if there's something going on that you're right. Like, if I'm not delivering properly, or is there something I'm not
Right.
saying? I want to make sure that you're not only listening, but there's some processing of it. So,
Yeah.
in terms of I'm always fascinated by people's trajectory. So you've got this storied past of all these different experiences and companies, and you're industry agnostic and all these sort of things. Do you ever look back and think there was either a central moment of failure or a central moment of influence or a central figure that came into your life and altered? And I don't mean just like our lives, our trajectories are altered in every moment. But I'm saying,
Yeah.
like, was there one moment? Because I had one when I got divorced that literally changed my entire trajectory of my life. So, what do you have any of those things that you look back and be like, dude, there was this one time when I was in prison and whatever it is?
Yeah.
Pretty sure you weren't in prison, but
I wasn't in prison. No, I think a lot of it is there's always segments of life. As a kid, growing up and being with a single parent for many years, parents got remarried, that always shifts things and makes your brain think, because you're always, when you're young, your interpretation of life and things like that shift you to what you're trying to do and accomplish as you're young and as you grow through certain ages and things like that through high school, college, and competing that I competed at running wise and having the great moments and the failures and having coaches that were in college that was very tough on me and just said things to you like you just can't believe. Nowadays it would not be allowed to say the things, or at least they don't promote it out there in the public, that how coaches would treat you that way, which is fine. It made me, the more people pushed against me or doubted me, the more I would push harder and to do better and prove people wrong. So it's always more like I took the challenge. Anytime there's a challenge, I took the challenge. And I think that's just through life of growing up and how things came about throughout my life, is every time it's like, oh, this is a challenge, I'm going after it. I'm not, no one's going to tell me that I can't do it, or no one's going to tell me that it's impossible. I will prove them wrong. So it's always more proving people wrong, or maybe proving myself wrong. I have no idea, but it was just
so
that
what I hear you
mindset.
saying is this: look, you're more believing in the idea of a body of work was what shaped who you are in terms of.
Yeah, body of work and people that are around me. Definitely as an entrepreneur, business owner, starting companies, working for people to grow their company. There are lots of failures throughout the time. Some have been failures,
Well,
and
let me stop there for a second
yeah.
because I'm not going to let you off that easily. In terms of looking back at your experiences themselves and the body of work, was there
Mhm.
something in that space that you can pinpoint and be like, that completely shaped a philosophy I hold today, that formed an opinion that I have about life today, something that sort of really tipped the knob a bit?
I think a lot of it goes back to paying attention to what people are doing and how they're doing it, not even in business, but in life, of looking at things of people have a story, and we sometimes think we know what that story is. And I think people thought they knew who I was or who I am now, and how life was not always the greatest and things were never just perfect, and trying to reinvent myself and trying to prove that, you know, I'm better than what most people think, or you're trying to outdo yourself the next time. And I think that's what shaped me, is just trying to say, not, well, how would you say it? No matter how much I've done in the last so many years, I still don't think I've done anything. So that's something that's probably shaped me. The inside my brain is just saying, what have you done lately?
So are you viewing that as self-doubt, or are you saying that's a strength that you've developed because of that?
It's a strength and a weakness, because the
Yeah.
strength is then it pushes me harder to do things and I enjoy, and people are like, oh, because of your past and this, look what you've done. And I look at it as, yeah, I've done these things, but anybody can do it. But then I have to be reminded. My wife reminds me all the time, no, you've done some amazing things,
Yeah.
and it's okay.
Yeah.
And it's okay. But yeah, there's a lot of, I never sit and reflect on the things I've done. I just continue to push forward and say, what can I do tomorrow? What's the next thing? Whatever I've done today is not good enough. So it's just that kind of thing. So I don't know if that's necessarily shaped me. It's just, unfortunately, that's what it drives me. But what drives me the most is like, how do I help people?
Well,
Because
let me stop you
I,
there because we're going to get to
yeah,
that. Sorry. I want to stick with this question if I can.
yeah.
So, this whole idea, and it's phenomenal to me how many people have what you just described, this idea of it's come up with a bunch of different vernaculars, but imposter syndrome in terms of
Hmm.
those nature. We'll just simplify it with those two terms. It baffles me how many great people who have accomplished a shit ton of things,
Hmm.
whether it's through sports, whether it's through business, whether it's through whatever, that still have this image of themselves that they're just not quite enough. They just aren't living up to this standard that they themselves have set the bar on. And I'm always fascinated by this idea because you clearly have done a lot of things. And I suffer from it from time to time as well. I'm
Yeah.
like, Jesus, I just didn't do enough this week. I'm going to go back in the office and start working. I always wonder, where did that come from? Do you think is that a nature nurture conversation? Like our culture brought us into that? Was that something that our parents taught us when we were younger? Is it social media that's now doing it to kids today? Where do
Yeah.
you think that idea of this imposter syndrome actually originates from within each of us?
I think a lot of it is depending on what age you are and stuff like that, where you grew up. I didn't, of course, didn't grow up with social media and that type of thing. We didn't have phones that we had to
Same,
carry around,
same.
and we didn't have all the things, which I can't imagine growing up at in this life stage of life. That now at whatever age, teenager or younger, just because there's so much stuff that you're being told, and you even look at now as an adult, you're like, for a business person, you're looked on LinkedIn or anything else that you look at, and you say you're comparing yourself to people, and there's imposter syndrome out there with people, and they post stuff, and it's, oh my gosh, they're more successful. Look what they're doing.
Yeah, yeah.
They're having they're living their best life. And it's just, no, not probably not really, but it's just what you get in your head. And I think for me, it was more of growing up and always thinking that I can do better or I should be better. And that's just what's fed me all these years, was saying, no matter what was told to me or not told to me when I was younger, it's just like, how do I do this? I always felt like I'm on my own, so I have to do it on my own. And there was nobody there to really, like, growing up, there was not somebody, a father figure or someone that was like, hey, you're doing a great job.
Hmm.
So you just have to, so you're just like figuring things out on your own as you get older,
Yeah.
and trying to fill in those holes that maybe were never going to be filled in.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying, and I totally identify with that sometimes. But it's still at the core of that, it's still an imposter syndrome. We don't
Mhm.
necessarily have to always work harder to become better. Working
Right.
smarter obviously can help us, but having that clarity in terms of self-awareness of what we actually bring to the table has been a monumental shift for me. Just speaking from my own personal. You talked a bit a few seconds ago about the superpower, and one of the questions I ask everybody who comes on the show is to think about your superpower. What's your gift to the world? And I don't want you to answer that just yet. I want to weave into it. But
Yeah.
another way to picture that question is if someone were to come to you today, Mike, and say, hey, I'm taking you back to the motherland, or your
Yeah.
life ends today. This is it.
Yeah.
And you have one gift
Yeah.
to deliver to humanity. So that's another way of looking at that and what that gift is. And so
Hmm.
when you think about the gifts that you have, that you
Hmm.
bring to humanity right now, whether it's consulting, whether it's coaching, whether it's simplifying things, whether it's strategy, whether it's big picture, whether it's the alignment of the resources, how do you think your superpower makes the biggest shift for humanity in terms of making them better?
A lot of it is just understanding people. I feel like I do a better job understanding other people than I understand myself, or at least I can't coach myself. That's just not going to happen. So really is, like I said, going back to what we said from the beginning, is listening to people, understanding, pushing in a little bit more beyond the surface of what people are saying, and understanding there are a lot of things that make us who we are today, and then saying, okay, how can I help them? How can I encourage them? How can I show them or help them, guide them to a better person, a better them, which then in turn, if you're talking about then with the company or their own organization, it's like, how can they be better? Not just making more money or whatever. Is like, how can they be better to the people that work for them or who they work for, and then how to really make a process better. And that's where I look at it, is I can see the big picture of, this is what the CEO wants, this is the vision. Then I come in and I can execute it for them and say, this is how you're going to do it. But I've been doing it for many years. So now this is how it's going to actually going to make it work better. And sometimes it's is completely taking an organization, a certain area, and just tearing it down and rebuilding it and saying, this is the better foundation, this is how it's going to work. And I think I'm that's something I'm just drawn to, is I'm always wanting to help people and help organizations, and it's like, how do I help them from the ground up? And that's where it is, I think, the thing I'm able to do.
Sorry, is this something that you've always had as a talent or a skill, this ability, this big picture, and you've, or is this something that you've developed over time through your challenges and your experiences and all the different things that you've done? Or you've always, if you look back at yourself as a kid, were you always like the diplomat of the group? Were you always, fellas, let's take a look at this from a more holistic perspective, whatever? Because I was not. So I'm just curious, like, how do you develop that sort of big picture, that
A
conceptual?
lot of it, I think, was developed when I was younger. It just always was like the person. Unfortunately, at times when there's chaos or things that something needs to happen, someone needs help, someone needs whatever it is, oh, we're going to pull that break the glass and send Mike out there. So a lot of times that's what would happen. Is some reason I thrive in that, which is very interesting. Is when there's lots of things going on, I'm somehow all of a sudden it clicks in my brain. It's like everything in my brain slows down and I can see where everything needs to be and help people sort through things. So I'm like, you throw me in the middle of chaos, I will sort it out. I will figure out this is what you need to do. This is what you need to do. Here's what we need how to take care of this. And I'm addressing not just the person, but also any other problem itself. So it's just, that's something, I don't know, from a young age to now. And over time I've developed a better way of doing it. Because as you're younger and you're immature or just lack of life experience, you don't have how do you handle it the best way.
Yeah.
And that's what I've done over the years, is improved upon that, but still have the same thing, is throw me in something. And that's why when I work with clients,
Hold on a
after
second,
a
because
while,
hold on a second. There's like a helicopter coming to pick you up right now above your head or
of
something.
all days, you
Your
you're like,
ship is
make
your
sure there's
ship is
no
here, bro.
sound.
Bro, your ship is here. Get ready to give your gift because they're asking for you right now.
Coming for you.
Yeah, you talk a little bit about this. You're what's there's a metaphor for this, but you've always been calm under pressure, so to speak, is what I heard you say. Have you actually? And I've always wondered about this, and for myself, like how would I react in a really tough, critical, hazardous situation where, whether my life was on the line or someone else's life was on the line or the house was on fire. And I'm not trying to project bullshit in the world. I'm just curious because we all talk a good game, but when it comes down to it, are we actually going to step up and be a man when the time comes? And have you, so what I'm hearing you say is you've been in situations where you've had to step up and you found out that like you had the courage, you weren't fearful,
Right.
you were able to step into the fire and handle the
Yeah.
situation. Yeah, it's a fantastic skill to possess, and I wonder how many people actually truly possess it, or is it a fight or flight thing that kicks in, and some people go to fear, some people go to fight. I don't know, but
Yeah.
anyway.
And I know it could be on different situations, different things, but there's been time and time again, those things have been like thrown at me. It's like, why am I in this situation? Do I seek it out, or does it find me? Which one is it? And I've had that over time with a variety of things, and with family crises. I lost a friend, what was it, 2019, committed suicide, and as I was thrown into it, it was like, Mike, you need to take care of this. So I helped take care of the family. I helped figure out everything to take care of everything from moment finding out to all the way to ongoing past that. And it's just one of those things, just like you're in the middle of it. Would I have ever expected to have to deal with that? No, never. But it was something that's now you're being called upon. So what are you going to do? So I can shut everything else out and focus on people and the situation. And that's how, in a very different thing, from a business to personal life to whatever, I can, in the moment's notice, it's time, and it's time to focus on what you need to do.
If you had to teach this to somebody, this superpower you possess, this calmness under fire or under pressure, and is there one thing that you would tell someone in order to take on this skill? Don't give me everything. Just give me one thing.
Yeah.
Because I have a lot of questions to get to still. If there's one thing, let's just pretend you're talking to me. You're my coach.
Yeah.
And I do not have this calm under pressure like you. Like I
Right.
get frantic. I get anxious. I might even get scared. What's the one thing you would say to me to start to learn to become more calm and more focused and more placid under pressure?
And I think a lot of, in a sense, trying to think about how to unpack that and keep it simple is almost like like if people are into meditation or something to focus, and it's almost you have to singularly focus on something, and that's where it's almost like you take that moment and you turn off all the noise. I don't know, it's like people talk about your phone and other things. It's to where the room is so quiet and all you can hear is the one singular thing you're trying to do. And that's, for me, it's a thing that just switches all of a sudden to where it's like all the noise outside closes off and I just have to focus. And I was like, okay, what am I focusing on? I'm not focusing on myself. I'm not focusing on all the other things on the outside. I'm focusing on the issue at hand, the problem, the thing that needs to be solved. And all of a sudden everything goes away. And that's all then I'm just hyper focused. And I think that's where it's like you're training yourself. People fight with, anxiety and other things. It's like, how do you slow things down, get your heart rate down to be able to say, okay, how do I adjust and truly just not worry about anything else but that one thing? And that's where I would start.
So in that space of me starting with that, turning off the noise and becoming really focused on that one thing, that requires a lot of self-awareness and observation of yourself and sort of introspection and like asking deep, meaningful questions about who you are and what do you stand for and what do you believe in? Because when you can better clearly understand those and articulate them to yourself, first and foremost, you're able to share that with anyone else who might be willing to listen. So when you think about that space as it pertains to Mike Straza, do you have any guiding questions that you regularly ask yourself to help you make better decisions, become a better leader, be a better partner, whatever it is that you're trying to strive towards? Do you have like this question that you ask yourself about things?
Yeah, a lot of it is like, why? A lot of times, like, why am I here? It's this whole question of like life. It's okay. What is my purpose here on this earth? What am I here for? And then a lot of it is, what am I? If I'm going to address something or do something, is it about me or is it about the person or the thing? And trying to say is, what is the reason I'm doing this? And a lot of times that's something for me, it's good and bad, is you're thinking about, why are the things I'm doing? Why do I help people? Why do I get involved in community things? Again, it comes to the core of who you are and trying to really decide, is it about me or is it about truly helping others, helping people, the community, whatever that is. And yes, you get something from it, but you're not the center focus. You're not that person that's the main reason. Oh, your mic's off.
It's supposed to turn off when I start talking and it's not reading me. It's like there's an auto integration that we built in with some new software. So thank you for calling me out. This whole question that you just shared with us, and we'll cut all this stuff out. This, who am I? Like, what's my purpose and all these sorts of things. A lot of people have mantras and lexicon that they use to inspire them. Is there something that you believe in, this sort of, if I had to plaster my personal motto on what town are you in?
Bloomington, Illinois.
So what's the main freeway that runs through Bloomington? What freeway is that?
55.
All right, so you're rolling down the 55 and you have a billboard and it's Mike Straza's mantra. Do you have a mantra around things, the way you live your life?
I guess it would just be more of, be better than you were yesterday.
I like that one. No, that's a great one. I tell my kids that every single day. I have two daughters and I'm like, my daughters, one of them is very deep and meaningful, and the other one's like me as a kid, which is just get to the point already. And they're always asking me these questions because we've always spent a long time asking deep questions, and we read a lot together. And we're really big nerds and all this. And I always just tell them, I really truly believe that the purpose of us being here, outside of impacting others, is to become a better version of ourselves in every instant, whatever that means. That requires learning, that requires failure, that requires all the sorts of things. In the space of living your best life or becoming better of who you are, have there been any really tough decisions? Or when you face really tough decisions, do you feel like you rely more on your instinct and your gut, or is this more of a pragmatic, analytical thing in the way you approach tough decisions and problem solving?
Some of the problem solving through other businesses I've had, owned, operated, some of it was by gut, and sometimes that gut was not right. So there were times and a lot of it is just what I've seen before, where I need to go, and again, what is the purpose of why I made that decision? And sometimes it was to take care of my family. Sometimes it was to take care of others, to an organization, a business that I was in at one time that I wanted to make sure it's continued to succeed. And the way it was structured, I wanted people to keep their jobs. So I stepped away from it and thinking that was the best choice. And that was something to protect people's livelihood was the best thing. Just the way it was structured, I felt at that time was the right thing to do. Who knows? You always go back and wonder if that was the right thing.
Yeah, I try to stay away from those what if scenarios. I used to do, if you spend all your time in the what if places, it's a boiling pot it's like the frog that just has the slowly temperature turned up.
Yeah.
In terms of this whole idea around how do I rephrase this question? When you're in the process of learning things and you come up against struggles and you have this whole idea of, you just mentioned you made bad decisions and your gut didn't tell you the right way. Do you think that there's a place in our lives for listening to our gut, being more intuitive, being more instinctual, or do you think that people should spend more time and focus on the practical, pragmatic, analytical side of things?
I think they're a little bit of both. Everything is, I'm very analytical, very like numbers and people and trying to think it out. And sometimes you're always going to have your internal gut that's going to make that decision because sometimes you can't tell. It's like they look both, here's analytics, this is what it's telling me, and this is what your heart or whatever is telling you. And you're like, okay, which one's a little bit better on the scale? And sometimes you can't tell. And sometimes internal outweigh, no matter how much the analytics show you, you're like, nope, gonna do that. And you're like, and you have to accept it. And that's where I look at it as sometimes you just accept what you choose based if it's analytics or not. And sometimes it's just all about, it's the numbers, what's the hard facts, what is it showing you? And those are the harder ones, not just for me, but also when I'm telling to my clients, like, here's what it is. I say, I know you want to do this. I know this makes sense, but you have to decide to make this decision, what is the purpose of that decision? Is it truly about money and doing XYZ to your company? Or is it more like I'm willing to ignore some of the analytics because I can keep my staff, I can keep whatever that is. Sometimes you ignore it a little bit and say, I'm willing to take the risk or take a little less to be able to provide something else for other people. And that's why I always ask people about their businesses, no matter what type, for-profit, nonprofit, what is your purpose? What are you trying to do? And is it to grow a business, to have people that work for you, or is it to make money only, or to prop it up to sell it? So again, you're trying to decide what is your purpose and what are you really trying to do? And that's where I have to break that down to figure that out.
As it pertains to understanding your purpose, that requires you to lead by example, even if just for yourself. And I'm always
Yeah.
fascinated at people's perspective on leadership because it's literally different no two people will say the same thing. In terms of some people think leadership is the president or the leader of a country. And I was like, have you seen what just ran for office? You think that's a true epitome of what leadership is? And I'm not going to go political here, but if those are the two best people we have to bring into our leaders, like we're in a
Yeah.
shit show. But that being said, what is your view of leadership? Who is a leader? What makes a leader great? What makes somebody followable, or what makes somebody, and maybe leadership doesn't require fellowship or fellowship, but what makes a leader to you?
A lot of it just depends on what you're trying to accomplish. Because I've been worked with people in the political world. I've worked with people in nonprofit, for-profit, and leadership shows itself in very different ways. And sometimes even with leadership, going back to a comment you made a second ago, is sometimes the leaders that you get are not the ones you want. But you have to look at it, and I've told this to many people, no matter what side you're on in a business to political, whatever, this is what you have. So now what are you going to do? How are you going to, you as a person, as a leader, your own self, your own family, your own whatever, everyone I think is a leader. It's just depending on where you're at in that hierarchy or whatever you want to call it. But again, you have to say, okay, this is what I got. So how do I make the best out of this? It's not how I want it, but this is what we have. But how do we continue to move forward? And I look at that as you look at all the things we've had over the years of crises, from housing to financial to whatever it is. It's always interesting to see which people rise out of it, companies, individuals, and the ones that don't and disappear, or the ones that reinvent or create something new out of a crisis because they're like, hey, I just came up with this idea because of this, what has happened. And that's what the beauty of things in the US is, like, we have that opportunity. A lot of us have that opportunity to make changes and do the things we want. And even when things go really bad, there are ways to come back out of it. And I look at leaders, some are put in places that are called leaders. They shouldn't be leaders. There's ones that are truly dynamic and they just have this way about them. I don't know if you've ever been in a room and you're like, oh my gosh, this person just connects with everybody.
Yes,
just lights up the room.
I want to stop you for a second because I want you to get to the point here because we're going to run out of time.
Yeah.
What do you, Mike Straza, define as leadership?
I look at as leadership is leading by example, and it's one of those things you just have to say, I'm willing to do as a leader. If I'm telling somebody to do something or explain something, I'm willing to do it myself. I'm willing to sacrifice myself to whatever that is. and truly caring about what you do. And sometimes people, leaders, you've seen them, really good leaders, famous people that are business owners or have whatever, they have a certain style and they're just hardcore and they're like, don't care, this is what we're doing, I'm pushing people to the limit. And that's great, but there's just something, I think leaders, I attract to more people that show compassion, have the knowledge, willing to do whatever they need to do to make things happen. And they're not saying, I'm going to lead, so you go do it for me. It's like, no, I want them to lead. I want them to lead the charge. I want to be out front and explaining and communicating to people what's going to look like, and they're going to be with you all the way through to the end.
So I heard you say a few things, and I want to unpack that. So being adaptive, being open-minded and nimble, leading by example. I love the compassion piece because you don't always hear that, and it really is important to have compassion just to be able to place yourself in someone else's shoes, whether they're working for you or you're collaborating with. And I don't hear people say that very much. So I appreciate that. I was reading a book and I forget the name of it. I'm the worst at short-term memory on books, but the author was talking about there's two different types of CEOs when he spent almost 30 or 40 years researching CEOs from all around the world and amalgamating data around them in terms of peer reviews, employees' feedback, et cetera, right? Like collaborative reviews, et cetera. And in fact, one of the things he did is he would find your business, for example, and then he would go out and find the type of people that you collaborate with. And I don't even know how he acquires this data, but he would interview people that had worked with you to get feedback on what type of a leader you were and what type of a CEO you were, et cetera. Anyway, he boiled it down to two types of CEOs. There's the CEO who believes that they belong in that position. They earned it. And therefore, everyone is subservient to their perspective, regardless of what it is. And then there's the CEO that you just described that leads by example, that is that believes that becoming a CEO or being the CEO is more about the human resources of your company. It's like leading the people so that they buy into your brand and they buy into your philosophies and all those sorts of things. And it's a fascinating read. And if you're interested in reading it, I'll find it and share it with you over email. But I love this breakdown because when you really stop and think about it and you look at people and humanity as a whole, you can see that deviation between the two different models. So I don't really have a question, but I'm just wondering if you agree with that, if you have what your thoughts are on that, or just where do you stand on that space?
Yeah, I think there are several different types of leaders and CEOs, and I've seen this in other aspects in politics, because I'm very involved in my local government, things like that. And people say, you ask, what is the reason why you do something? Is it because of me, or is it for the people? And we've lost that whole thing. And it's in businesses. It's why am I there? Why am I the CEO? Is it because I believe in what I'm doing and I want to teach people a better way or lead in a different way? And I think that's where comes down to is, what is your purpose? CEO, because it's a title, look at me, I make lots of money, whatever, or I want to be this person, I want to make this company go X amount of more years, I want to bring people along, I want to teach them, I want them to grow as a group, but also to provide something, whatever service you're providing out to the masses. This is what I'm providing. And I think, again, it goes back to a long life culture change, a life change, to where you're making an impact out in your community or beyond that, to where you're saying, wow, look at this person. They're actually making an effect on people, and they're going to take this, and it's going to be a legacy of learning and teaching and people growing to be a better person.
I like that response, and I don't think I need to ask, but so you align with yourself with the latter explanation, which is one is develop people CEO. You just mentioned legacy, and I'd like to close the show with sort of some legacy questions, if I may, because I'm always fascinated by why people got into business and why do you do what you do, and how do you uncover the problems that you solve, and how do you share that message with a larger population so that you can collaborate with people and make a difference. When you think about your legacy, whether it's a coach, whether it's as a father or a partner or a consultant, what's the one thing, and I want you to keep your answers relatively simple here just because I only have a few more minutes with you. What's the one thing that you want to be remembered for?
That I cared about people, and I would put them first before myself. And I think that's pretty much it. Problem solver, but mostly the same. At the end of the day, people are like, wow, he actually cared about us, and we weren't a number. We weren't something that elevated him to something else. It was just more of that he's a real person and he really cared.
So you do have a rebellious nature. So on the airplane, when the oxygen masks comes down, you're going to put yours on last, not the person. Oh, interesting. You're not supposed to do that. At least that's what it does. What's the next big thing that you're tackling right now? Something you're really excited about? What are you working on that is going to be either a trajectory change for you or for the people you're collaborating? What's one big thing you're focusing on right now?
A lot of it is just I'm currently just working with my clients and just trying to make things better there. Something that I am getting involved in, which is a whole new area, not new, but in a position wise. Like I said, I'm involved in the local city government, so I'm actually going to be on the city council for my city coming up in April, or be the elections in April. But again, that's a whole nother level of learning about how city government works, how to then work with the people of our own community and trying to say, how can I help more? Again, going further out, taking those risks and knowing that it's not a fun job and nobody likes anybody that's elected official. And it's just, that is something that it's like the new challenge for me is I'm doing it because I want to see how can I help my own community and then learn and to learn from other people and to learn beyond just our city limits and try to figure out how can I continue to add more to that and also to my clients that I'm working with.
What's your platform? What are you running on?
A lot of it is right now I'm uncontested, so I'm in a.
Is that why you already announced that you were going to win? You're like that movie with Will Ferrell that he's with Zach Galifianakis. You know what I'm talking about? Have you seen this movie? Have you seen this movie?
I don't remember the name of it.
Okay, but you have to just Google Zach Galifianakis and Will Ferrell, and they're two congressmen in a small town. And Will Ferrell has been consecutively like the congressman for 50 years. Yeah. And then suddenly this other guy, Zach Galifianakis, decides that he's going to run. But every year he accepts the nomination for nobody that ran against him. That's what you just did. Yes, and don't think that I didn't pick up on that because I was like, wow, he already called his victory. This guy's awesome.
He's calling it. He's calling a shot.
Son stepped up and said, this is the winner, chicken dinner. All right, so let's pretend that I'm running against you tomorrow. I announce it. I'm Zach Galifianakis. What's your platform? Why would people vote for you? What is it that you're bringing to the table that they can't already get from the long litany of corrupted fuckers that are running our government right now?
Overall, for me, I just look at it as no matter what your beliefs are, what your things are, is what is best for people. I want to elevate people to the next level. No matter where you're at, whatever your standings are, whatever you think, I am taking away from if you're this or this, left or right, middle, whatever. And a lot of it for our area, which is a lot of areas in this community or other communities, is housing, trying to find better ways for people to live, have a better life. And it's trying to figure out what that is and then figuring out how to control spending. And that's where a lot of it is like, nothing, it's not about me. If it's a one-term thing, which people will be interested in, oh, he's only doing one term, he's calling that too. I just want to do, what can I do for 4 years to effectively help our community and beyond that, to look at beyond just our city, looking beyond that and seeing how can I help in different ways. From if people aren't finding jobs, they're not getting housing, they're not, they feel ignored, how do I make them feel a little bit better or feel like something is advanced to where it's okay, something has changed. Mike has made a change or is really trying to help me other than trying to convince me of some other thing.
All right, as your campaign manager, we have to refine that message. So we got to get your 30-second elevator pitch down. So if you want to have a conversation with me offline, congressman or city councilman, Straza, let's get together because I can help you with that language. You got to simplify that. The people are not ready for that. They got to understand what's in it for me. Like people always want to know. I always tell everyone, if you're coming to me with the solution, I don't give a shit about your product or your business. I want to know what's in this for me. Yep. What problem are you going to solve for me? If I'm going to give you my time or my energy or my resources or my money, you better have a solution that's going to benefit me. So we're going to work on that language together.
Yep.
Last question. If you could give one piece of advice to yourself right now across the room, Mike Straza clone is sitting across from you, what would you say to him right now?
That's a good question.
Come on, man. I told you we keep it real.
Oh, man.
We don't go light. I'm gonna call you
earlier I was thinking, it's like, I gotta not negative thoughts. Stop those negative thoughts about yourself. Yeah. I don't know if that's the thing you're looking for. But.
I'm not looking for anything, man. This is your show, your spotlight. I'm always just fascinated, but that's an interesting conversation I'd love to break down with somebody if anybody wants to come on and talk about this self-talk and where it comes from and why do we sit there and stew in it and all these things. Anyway, good conversation.
Voice needs to go away.
Man, you are telling the truth. I really appreciate your honesty on that one. Anyhow, man, I appreciate this inspiring and enlightening conversation. You really took us through a lot of different things on this episode. I appreciate your candor. We've talked
Yep.
about your story, your philosophies, your strategies that have guided you to where you are today. And really one thing that has come clear to me is your ability throughout your life to identify these blind spots in people and cut through these complexities and align operations or visions. And this isn't just a skill. It's, as you talked about it earlier, it's your superpower. And I'm here henceforth coining you the strategic simplifier.
There you go.
That is your new knighthood term from the Branding Laboratory. And I just a few more thoughts, if I may, just humor me.
Yeah.
Your approach is refreshing, and it really lies in this sort of modality of keeping things simple. Keep it simple, stupid, right? And simplifying things that might seem overwhelming to other people because you're taking that outside perspective and focusing on actionable solutions instead of just like stewing in the muck. So anyway, for our listeners who are listening in today, we explored how Mike drives results and clarity and alignment and purpose, and they're at the centerpiece of his leadership modality. And his story is a testament to the power of stepping back and asking really hard questions and making the tough decisions to move forward with intention and figuring out like how do you show up in times of distress. And so Mike gave us some insights on that. So if you've been listening and thinking, I want to be a guest on the show, please DM me, send me a message. You can comment on the YouTube below, or you can send me an email, or you can visit thebrandstoryteller.com to apply and join me for a future episode. Mike, I really appreciate your time and energy. And if you can give us a few minutes after I close the show down, I'll just a couple of action items I have for you.
Sure.
All right, brother. Give me a few minutes. I'm going to drop you into
Yeah.
the. If you are a purpose-driven CEO ready to uncover your unique blueprint and amplify your brand, I would like to introduce you to my brand discovery process. This is a shameless plug. It's a transformative approach that I have patented and developed that combines a bevy of different modalities, from spirituality to science to psychology, and of course my God-given ability to see the big picture that I have been honing and developing for the last 20 years. And this process has literally helped hundreds of leaders align their personal values with their professional vision and uncover their core philosophies and create brands that resonate deeply with their audience. So if you're ready to clarify your brand and unlock your potential and make a bigger splash, a bigger impact, please visit me, Devo, at thebrandstoryteller.com to learn more and get started. Until next time, I am Devo, reminding you that who you are, is how you lead, and how you lead is how you grow. Thank you for joining us on the Branding Laboratory. See you on the next episode.